And our first caller is Mike Golding from Newcastle upon Tyne. Mike, good afternoon. You're through to Andy Burnham.
Oh, hi there.
Hi there, Mike.
Hi, Andy. I'm a lifetime Labour voter, and I've just joined the Labour Party because I want to participate in this leadership election because I really think it's important that we have the right person at the moment. And I'm torn between you and Jeremy Corbyn. So I wonder if you could help me decide which way I should go. Now, I live in the North East, which seems to fall outside most politicians' definition of the North. And since 2010, we've seen the highest fall in government funding per person since 2010, and with the UK's highest rate of unemployment running at about 8%. And I want you to convince me how to vote by telling me that if you were Prime Minister, how would you support the region?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mike. I mean, the first thing I would say is when you say you're thinking about whether to vote for Jeremy or myself, I would say that the attacks that we've seen on Jeremy, I think, misread the mood of the party. Because what people are saying is that they're crying out for something different. They are fed up with the way politics has been, and particularly the way Labour has been conducting politics in recent times. They want a bigger vision that can inspire and can excite them. They want something more to sell on the doorstep, quite frankly, at election time. So that's what I've offered. I don't know if you've received it yet, but my manifesto is dropping through letterboxes today. It's a radical vision for the future of the party and the country, but crucially, it's got credibility at its heart. I'm saying how I'm going to pay for everything, but also I believe it's a vision that can unite the party. It can bring the party together. And those two things are crucial if we're to win in 2020. So that's what I'm offering, Mike. I hope that appeals to you, as well as a rebalanced country. I'm somebody who doesn't think the North stops at the M62. You know, I believe it's wrong that the North East doesn't even have a proper motorway, never mind rail links that work. So I'm somebody who wants to rebalance our country fundamentally. And that's what I've always stood for.
Mike, I just want to come back to you in a second, but just a kind of a bit of statistical background for people listening in other parts of the country. The North East saw in the second quarter the highest rate of unemployment in the UK. It's at 8.1%. The lowest is the southwest of England at 4.4%. So those are quite significant challenges, Andy.
Massive challenges, Sean. And, you know, the inequalities that we see in our country from parts of the northeast to parts of the southeast are massive. You know, it's not just the wealth gap or indeed the health gap, it's the opportunity gap. You know, kids in the northeast getting their A-level results today are going to face it a lot harder to work in buildings like you and I are sitting in now. And, you know, I've always challenged this. The reason why I'm in this contest is because I want to challenge a world where the postcode of the bed you're born in still determines where you end up in life. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. OK,
Mike, a brief word in response to that.
Well, it all sounds very nice, but, it's to see policy put on that, really, isn't it? And I think we're worried here about skills training, help for business development, inward investment, infrastructure. Need to have a sort of a clarity on that.
Yeah, I agree with all those things, but can I just say, I mean, I've said that I would prioritise east-west rail links in our country over north-south. And secondly, on skills, technical education has been neglected by parliaments of all colours over many, many decades, and the young people who want a technical education have been discriminated against. One of my proposals is to extend all the support of the university system to young people who want high-quality apprenticeships, and you'll see that in my manifesto. You're absolutely on the same lines as me. OK, Mike, thanks for the call. Let's move on to Joy Hercombe, who's in Worthing. Good afternoon, Joy.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, Joy.
I'd like to say I'm absolutely amazed that the leadership candidates, apart from Jeremy, seem to want to not celebrate the amazing way in which the election has caught the enthusiasm of many, many people. And it is because we've had somebody in Jeremy Corbyn who's actually identified with people. He's an ordinary person. He's very honest. And he's identified with all the concerns that have been left behind by the Labour Party in the past. People who have are experiencing welfare cuts, who didn't believe that
So what's your question, Joy? If you can turn that in question, please.
Why are you not celebrating the amazing way in which this election period has taken off, and people are enthused, and people are now full of hope that there's going to be real opposition to the Tories. Rather than attacking Jeremy, why don't we all unite and oppose the Tories?
And I take it you're a Corbyn supporter, are you, Jeremy Corbyn supporter?
I am.
Yeah.
I've known Jeremy Corbyn's views for a long time.
Good. OK, let Andy answer your question.
It's a very fair question, Joy. And to be honest with you, I've been saying something similar myself over the last couple of weeks. I've said that Jeremy has brought the campaign to life. And as I said a moment ago to Mike, why? It's because there is a yearning out there for a different style of politics from Labour. You know, we've had this thing, retail politics, where small gimmicky policies have been served up to appeal to particular splinters of the population. It just isn't working for people, is it? People want something bigger that they can believe in. And particularly in a world where it's getting harder for young people to get on in life, where people worry about the care their parents get. Life is getting harder in the 21st century. The challenges have been getting bigger, but politics has gone the other way. It's been getting smaller and more gimmicky and pettier. And that, I think, is the disconnect that you're speaking about. And I'm trying to address that in my own way. And I would just ask you, have a look at my manifesto, give it a chance before you decide on where you put those numbers on that ballot paper.
Andrew Bethel has emailed in and asked, if elected, how would Andy Burnham manage the huge number of new, mostly young members and supporters who seem to have been energised by Jeremy Corbyn's campaign? Can you explain how you'd sustain their support in building a party towards trying to win the 2020 election?
Well, I think that is a really big part of Jeremy's campaign, and it is really important that we do capture that energy, because young people are looking at a world where things do get harder. You know, every budget seems to make it even more difficult for them to make their way in the world. It takes away some more support that they used to have. And I just don't think it is tenable to let young people embark on their lives with this millstone of debt hanging around their necks. So no wonder they respond when people start to talk about changing that. I've put forward my own change. I've said that we can't make university education completely free, but we should move away from this system of a big debt to a system of a graduate tax that people pay throughout their lives. Now, that's what I mean about credibility. I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. We're going to have to be able to show how they can be paid for. But this is a much better way of helping people make their way in the world. I think more broadly, Sean, just to finish on this point, we just have to engage people more in politics. You know, the line I've been using in this contest is, if you're old enough to be exploited in a Sports Direct shop on a Saturday afternoon when you're working, you're old enough to vote. So we should have votes at 16. We should get rid of the youth rate minimum wage, because that is a further disadvantage for young people. And why does Mr Osborne's national living wage only start at age 25? Isn't that going to create a two-tier workforce and further cement the divide between young and old? I think it is. These are the things Labour should be speaking to and giving young people real solid answers they can get behind.
Just on what's been happening in the Labour Party at the moment, this big surge in new members and registered supporters and those affiliating in order to take part in the leadership election. I mean, you are concerned about how this works in the immediate process of the leadership contest, aren't you? I mean, you and the other candidates, or at least Yvette Cooper and Liz Kendall, your campaigns joined together to say, look, we want to know about whether we're going to get access to all these members quickly enough. I think there's a 10-day delay, isn't there, before you get the details of these affiliated union supporters?
Yeah, that's right, Sean. It was a point of clarification, to be honest, about that. But no, I'm not crying foul on the rules. You know, it is
There's no question of a legal challenge over this.
Not at all. You know, it is a wonderful thing that 600,000 people are now signed up to vote in our election for the next leader. And, you know, other political parties couldn't say the same thing. We said we wanted to open up politics. We have done with this contest. You know, my aim now is to keep this positive, and I want to get my message through to those 600,000 voters. And my message is, I've got a radical vision, but one which you can unite the party, is credible, and because of those two things, can also then deliver Labour victory in 2020.
You want to keep it positive then, so you don't share the concerns that Tony Blair has expressed about the potential annihilation of the party if Jeremy Corbyn becomes leader, or indeed the concerns of Yvette Cooper, which we heard earlier. Old ideas for old problems.
Tony Blair is entitled to have his say in this contest. Lots of people are, and we must always listen to somebody who's won 3 elections for our party. But my point was at the beginning, let's not misread the mood of the party. You know, if we're just attacking people and making dire warnings, I think it is misreading what people are saying. This election needs to bring some change to Labour. It needs to bring a change in the style of our politics. It needs to deliver members more substance in terms of the policy answers to the big challenges of the 21st century. And that is what I am offering. You know, my manifesto has got ideas, for instance, like a national health and care service, bringing social care into the NHS. In the century of the ageing society, that is a big answer true to Labour's traditions. And it's that kind of thing that I think people are looking for.
OK, let's move on now to Christabel Robinson from Bristol. Christabel, we heard a lot from Andy Burnham about what he wants to do for young people. How old are you?
15.
15, right. OK, go ahead. You're through to Andy Burnham with your question.
Well, I was wondering, if you got elected as the Labour leader or Prime Minister, would you review Trident, and also what your opinion on Trident is?
Well, thanks, Christabel, and it's a very important question, and great that you're ringing in to ask it. I would have to be honest with you. I've been an MP for coming on 15 years, and when I first got elected, I don't think I could possibly have imagined the world events that I've seen in those years. It was only 3 months after I became an MP when September the 11th happened, and all of the other events that came in the wake of that. And I'll be honest and say that I just do not believe I know enough at this point in time about how our world will develop in the rest of this century for our country alone to take a step into the unknown and say, you know what, we're going it alone now. Yes, I believe in multilateral disarmament, of course, but I can't say to you today on the radio that I would back away from renewing Trident. I wouldn't, because the first responsibility of anybody who seeks to be Prime Minister is that you've got to secure the safety of the British public. When we have a situation when in Europe Russia is flexing its muscles, is flying into our airspace on occasions, there are tensions there that I just don't feel we can ignore now. We don't know enough about how this uncertain world of ours will go in the next few years. I'm sorry if that's the answer that maybe you didn't want to hear, but that is what I believe.
Christabel, what do you make of that?
I was thinking about countries like Canada and Switzerland and Germany that are quite powerful countries that don't, to my knowledge, don't have a nuclear weapon, and wondering how they manage with that and why we can't not do the same, why our situation is different.
Well, it's a good question, but of course their history is different, isn't it, in respect of their involvement in conflicts past, and our membership of the Security Council gives us a leadership position on these matters, and we are in a position where we have a nuclear deterrent. The question is, should we, on our own, begin to get rid of it and not renew it? And honestly, I just don't believe, my judgment is that I don't believe I know enough about how the world will develop over the rest of this century to take that step.
Is that why your manifesto, according to Tim Smart, who's emailed in, doesn't include anything, he says, about Britain's place in the world, or indeed about the global migration crisis, or about climate change?
It does mention climate change. It does mention Britain's place in Europe. I mean, on climate change, I'm saying that we need to have a future-looking environmental policy. I think it's a real kind of backward step that the government has scrapped subsidies for onshore wind at the same time as they're going hell for leather after fracking. For me, that is a very backward-looking environment policy. So I would go precisely in the opposite direction. I would place a moratorium on fracking and reintroduce those incentives to invest in renewables. So there is mention in there. There is a limit, of course, as to how much, Tim, you can put in a mailing to all members. I wish I could have said more on those important topics, but they are in there. OK, let's move on. Christabel, thanks very much for your call, to Jennifer Budden, who's in Exmouth in Devon. Good afternoon, Jennifer. You're through to Andy Burnham.
Hello, thank you very much. I'd like to ask you, Andy, whether or not you would bring in a proportional voting system. We've already talked a lot in the programme and elsewhere about how disaffected voters are and how people feel helpless and how they feel cynical that all politicians are the same. And it seems to me that our voting system doesn't help people to feel connected or to feel engaged or to feel that they can have any involvement in what actually happens in our country.
Well, I know you speak for many people, Jennifer, in saying that. I've heard it a lot at the hustings events that we've been taking part in. We've got to remember we had a referendum, didn't we, just 5 years ago. Now, I know people would say that the form of PR that was on offer was not good enough, the AV system, and I know that, I understand that. But I think it's difficult right now to have another referendum on another form. But here's something. I mean, I believe we can create a more proportional parliament by now embarking on the long overdue reform of the House of Lords. I happen to believe in the system of indirect election to the Lords called secondary mandate that's been championed by Billy Bragg. And the idea about that is that you comprise a proportional Lords from votes cast for a first past the post Commons. So you have a regional list system to comprise the Lords. What that means is every vote counts. So everybody who casts a vote at the general election goes in some way to making up the shape of the new Parliament.
But if you can do that for the Lords, why not do it for the Commons?
Well, it would be a step, wouldn't it, in that direction, Sean? And all I'm saying is at this point in time, I don't think you can go straight back to another referendum and another whole debate on this. But I do recognise the power of what Jennifer is saying. People do want to see a voting system that better reflects what they have voted for, and this election brought that out, as indeed the 2010 election did. So I suppose I'm meeting you halfway. I'm saying that there is a big change we could make that would make every vote count and would make the House of Lords a true Senate of the nations and regions of the UK, and I think that would help bind us back together a bit, because the Lords effectively is a bit of a cosy London club, really, and it doesn't fully reflect all the voices of our country.
OK, Jennifer, thank you. Let's move on to Brian Eden, who's in Wrexham. Hello to you, Brian.
Hello.
What's your question for Andy Burnham?
Andy, good afternoon to you.
Hi, Brian.
If you're unsuccessful in your bid to become leader, are you going to be willing to serve in a shadow cabinet led by one of the other contenders?
That's a good question, Brian, and yes,
it seems they ask you, of course, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. They may have other plans, but I hope you would see in me somebody who's served Labour in whatever capacity I can down the years. I mean, that doesn't change. I'm a team player more than an individualist when it comes to politics. But I would say this: I believe I'm the only one who can beat Jeremy Corbyn actually in this contest, Brian, for two reasons. I've got the broad support across all sections of the party, but I've also got that vision, I think, that can inspire people in the way that they want things to change. They want a vision they can get behind, and that's what I believe I've delivered. So I believe I am the only candidate who can beat him. I am confident going into the final stage of this race, and to be honest, I'm really energised in the way that I've not been for many years, in that this is a real fight for the future of the Labour Party. And I think when that finally arrives, I know why I'm doing this. I know what I'm doing it for. I know what I believe in. I've put that forward to people, and it is in the end actually quite an energising thing to do. And I'm confident I can go on from here and win.
Has anyone said to you at any point, look, have you and Yvette and Liz considered actually two of you stepping aside and letting there just be a one-on-one? Because Jeremy Corbyn is now apparently so far ahead, the survey suggests, that having a divided approach to it is not a way of taking on the challenge he's posing.
I will be fighting this contest right to the very end.
That wasn't my question. I was asking if anybody has said that to you.
There was people on the TV last night saying something similar.
But nobody said it to you direct.
No, I'm not at this stage kind of going around canvassing those kind of opinions, Sean. I am focusing on what I'm saying, getting my message out to those 600,000 members. Every day spent internally kind of plotting some kind of ruse is a day lost in terms of getting our message over to people.
Brian, thank you very much for your call. Just on that subject, Connie Nolan has tweeted, Jeremy Corbyn has opened up an economic debate. Why can't you engage with an alternative to Tory-light policies?
Well, that too is in my manifesto. I have said we made two big mistakes in the last Parliament. The first was we allowed the Tories to hang that millstone of Labour's mess around our necks, and we didn't do anything like enough to challenge it or take it back off. The introduction mentioned I was Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Well, I was when I did the last spending review of the last Labour government. And my recollection is that David Cameron and George Osborne called that spending review tough. So I'm quite fine, actually, in terms of my economic credentials. The second mistake we made, I think, was not giving people a clear enough alternative at the election. It looked like we were watered down Osborne and Cameron.
Tory-light, in other words, to use that phrase.
Yeah, less kind of severe, but not quite spelling out what differences we would make. And I'm saying we can't do that again. We need a Labour plan for the economy, which is a genuine alternative that doesn't start with the notion that you reduce the deficit almost exclusively from public spending cuts, because I believe that will destroy the fabric of our communities and it will hurt some very vulnerable people. I believe we need a more balanced plan that is based on productivity, on growth, on spending cuts where necessary, but also on tax. Well, why should Labour be frightened of saying we need a more balanced plan between spending cuts, but also raising taxes where that is justified?
Andy Burnham, Labour leadership contender, thank you very much for being with us today and taking our calls for the world at once.